My first sort of run-ins with music happened very early on. My mother was a professional classical musician. She was an oboe player. She was playing in various orchestras. So I grew up surrounded by classical music. My mother was oboe professor at the Royal Academy of Music, but prior to that was playing in various British orchestras. It was an interesting period, of course, because that's when women were in orchestras for the first time in England, because the men were all at war. I grew up surrounded by classical music. My father also was an amateur pianist, big Gilbert and Sullivan fan, big fan of choral music in general. He had us all singing parts around the piano at an early age and so on. So music was always part of my life, and I think I discovered rock and roll, pretty much when it happened. I think the first record I ever bought was a record by Tommy Steele, a pre-British invasion, first British rock star era, along with him and Cliff Richard and those people. Tommy Steele's song called Rock with the Caveman was the first record I bought, a song written by Lionel Bart, who went on, of course, to become very famous for writing Oliver and all those great musicals. So that was the first record I bought. I think the first American record I bought was probably Rock Around the Clock, Bill Haley. And then after that, all of it. Discovered Elvis and the Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly. I was also a huge jazz fan. I used to collect, bebop records, and I bought what I now realize must have been a lot of bootleg records. It was a place off the Chancross Road where you could buy American records that were not for sale in England. And I realized they were actually acetate, so clearly they were bootlegs. And I had a lot of Woody Guthrie, a lot of, as I say, American prestige records and Blue Note records and all that stuff. So I became a music fan and a record collector quite early on. And we used to go and see when any of those people came to London, we would go and see them. And I remember seeing Thelonious Monk from a few feet away, because the festival hall in London, if it was a non-classical concert, would sell the choir stalls behind the stage cheap. But in this instance, Monk was sitting stage right, I recall, at his piano, 3 or 4 feet in front of the choir stalls. And of course, he would famously get up and walk around, pace the stage during other people's solos. So I remember Monk playing all this Monk stuff and then getting up and walking like feet away from us, mumbling and cursing or whatever he was doing. He's a genuine mad genius, and that was one of the best concerts I ever went to in my life. Gordon and I met at school. We both discovered that we both played the guitar and sang. Had we known more people, we might have become a group, who knows. I was a bit more of a folkie. He was a bit more of a rock and roller. He was a big Elvis fan, as you can tell by looking at him. He cultivated a bit of the Elvis stare. And so we tried doing it together just to see what it sounded like, and it sounded okay, even though our voices are very different. I mean, that was in a way the odd thing, because you look at the Everly Brothers, I mean, yes, Don and Phil sound different, but not completely. But in the case of Gordon and me, Gordon had this big, rich baritone voice, and I've got this sort of weedy white choir boy voice. And the surprise was that when I sang harmony with him, it sounded pretty good. So we kept doing it, initially for fun, and then we'd get invited to go and play at parties and so on. And so it became, as it were, a thing. My friendship with Paul came about because my sister Jane was then and still is a very successful actress in London, and was quite well known. She was kind of a celebrity, and it was in that context that she was invited to go and see this band that was taking Britain by storm. Beatlemania was just beginning. They'd come down from Liverpool for the first time. Their very first hit, I guess, Love Me Do, was zooming up the charts. Beatlemania was taking hold. And she was invited as kind of a guest celebrity reviewer. She was also a big music fan anyway, to go and see them and see what she'd think and write a piece for this magazine, the Radio Times. So she went to the concert, loved the band, thought they were wonderful, met them all afterwards. She liked them very much, thought they were funny and charming and witty and so on. She liked them, they liked her. One of them liked her in particular, and as you probably know, asked her out. So she ended up going out with Paul McCartney for several years, and it was because of that he was hanging around our house all the time. And eventually, our parents offered him the guest room at on the top floor of our family home, as a pied-à-terre when they weren't out on the road. And he accepted. So he moved in to the top floor of the house, which is the bedroom next to mine. So he and I shared the top floor of our house in Wimpole Street for the next 2 years. And that's why we became friends. We all fell in love with American music. I mean, none of the British music enthusiasm at the time for rock and roll had anything to do with English music. I mean, folk music did. Of course, we all aware of its Celtic origins and all that stuff we were interested in. But rock and roll seemed to us just like jazz, a quintessentially American art form. We would go and see British jazz musicians at Ronnie Scott's. We'd go and see British rock and rollers at the Two Eyes Club or wherever it was. But we were very much aware that it was not the original. We knew that this music had come from America. It was America's greatest cultural contribution to the world. And all of us began, as tribute bands, not to a particular band, but to American music. I mean, we would do Everly Brothers songs, we would do Buddy Holly songs, we did folk songs. The Beatles, of course, were doing all American songs. There probably was not one British song they sang until they started writing them themselves. So I think it's important to realize that's where this whole British rock and roll movement came from. And the startling thing about the so-called British invasion was that it consisted of us learning your music and tweaking it a bit and selling it back to you. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.